So I stood there for a moment, holding this card with a piece of Buddhist teaching and wisdom, and muttered, yeah, no. You see, outside my office at home, I have this little nook where I can read or meditate. I may be sitting there to study in the next few years. And sitting there is a display that holds 59 of these cards, each card with one of the 59 Atisha slogans. And the slogans, they have a long history that I'm not going to bore you with here, but they're traced to 1,000-year-old teachings or 2,000-year-old teachings that are intended to train the mind toward compassion. Now, until that day, about a month ago, or a little over a month ago, my practice had been to pick a new card every few days, letting myself contemplate the slogan on and off as I went about my life, let it pop into my head whenever it did. And then, once I had what I felt like was at least some understanding of what it meant, how I could apply it as I went about my life and moved through the world, I'd put it back in the deck and pick a new card and start again. But that day, it was the Sunday before Memorial Day. I had just gotten off the phone with my sister, who told me I needed to come home because my mom was in the hospital and we weren't sure she was going to wake up. And the card in my hand read, "Always maintain only a joyful mind." Now, by the time Amy and I got to the hospital in Wausau, my mom was awake. She was weak and tired, but telling jokes. And she was beginning a slow but steady recovery. She's home now, doing pretty well. I talked to her yesterday to tell her that her atheist son is going to seminary. But 6 weeks have gone by. And the slogan on display in my little nook hasn't changed. Slogan 21, always maintain only a joyful mind. Every time I looked at it, my favorite line from The Princess Bride kept going through my head. You keep using those words. I do not think they mean what you think they mean. Okay. But what do they mean? Do they have any meaning, any application to my life, to the real world at all, or is this just some flight of fancy by some monk somewhere living in a cave? Confronted with those words in a moment of personal angst, in a time when the news just keeps feeding us a steady diet of one tragedy after another, it would have been so easy. It was so easy to say, yeah, well, that's dumb. To dismiss a teaching from one of the world's greatest religious traditions because it just doesn't seem to mesh with the reality that I see and experience. A joyful mind all the time? I mean, come on. And look, there could be something very you in this dismissive approach. Sure, we say that we are inspired by the teachings of the world's religions, but we aren't bound by them. We've covenanted to support each other in a search for truth and meaning. And if in that search we want to reject another faith's teaching because we think it's dumb, we can do that. But should we? Or maybe the better question is, how should we? Because I think sometimes the answer is yes, we should. How should we reject those ideas? How readily, how easily, after how much consideration? Because as UUs, we covenant to support not just any search for truth and meaning. We covenant to support each other in a responsible search for truth and meaning. And a responsible search, I think, means giving the benefit of the doubt to a religion that is thousands of years old. I admit I find it easier to do that for Buddhism than I often do for Christian teachings, which is something I hope to work on in seminary. So slogan 21 sits on the top of my deck of cards, waiting for me to decide what it means to me. If anything. I mean, before I dismiss it, maybe I should dig into it. What might it mean that I didn't see in the first or the 12th or the 25th reading? Is there something in it that I just don't want to accept? Some difficult lesson, some way it might call me to make a change in my life, in the way I approach the world, in the way I think, that maybe I don't really want to make? Or is it really just nonsense? Or am I just scared that it isn't nonsense? I mean, on its face, the slogan sounds pretty vapid. As one writer put it, always maintain only a joyful mind can too easily sound like we are being told that we should always try to be happy in all situations. And I think part of the challenge here, according to Buddhist writer and teacher Judy Leaf, is the way we think about joy. Joy doesn't have that good a reputation in our culture. She writes in an essay about this slogan. We tend to associate it with idiocy or with people who are spaced out or stupid, people who are blithely ignorant of the state of the world or simply too self-absorbed to bother. How can you be joyful when there are so many problems? What about the truth of suffering, the problem of greed and craving? What about warfare, oppression, prejudice, and on and on? The slogan cannot be calling us to embrace an ignorance is bliss type of joy. It isn't telling us to convince ourselves that everything is okay because, as Leaf wrote, Buddhism is known for telling it like it is and for not being afraid to face hard truths. And the truth is that everything is not okay. Indeed, the first of Buddhism's four noble truths is that suffering exists. We must see the reality of that suffering in the world, accept it, before we can do anything to reduce it. So this Buddhist slogan cannot be telling us to be a bunch of happy idiots. Okay, so at first I thought, here's the problem. It's the word only. Always maintain only a joyful mind. We can't be expected to maintain only a joyful mind, can we? Maybe the slogan would work better without it. And it turns out there are translations that leave that word out. Always have the support of a joyful mind is one. Always be sustained by cheerfulness is another. And I do think dropping only does leave room for more than just the joyful or cheerful mind, and it makes the slogan a little easier to take. But easier probably isn't the point. And honestly, I'm not sure how much easier those translations really make things, because they still tell me to always have that joyful mind. And that still feels like a lot. So the challenge here isn't the word only. I think the struggle is with understanding what a joyful mind really is. I've been conflating joyful and happy. And they aren't the same thing, at least not to the Buddhist teachers who have passed along these slogans for a millennium. Now, according to one Zen definition, a joyful mind is the mind of gratitude for what is. Okay, but now, some of what is kind of sucks. So I'm not sure I'm ready to have gratitude for all of it. So I think a more complete definition is that a joyful mind is a mind with gratitude for its awareness of what is. On the back of the card that started me down this journey, there's a short commentary on the slogan and what it's calling us to do. Constantly apply cheerfulness. Okay. If for no other reason than because you are on this spiritual path, have a sense of gratitude to everything, even difficult emotions, because of their potential to wake you up. And the more I dig into this slogan, the more I see that the opportunity to wake up and the idea of gratitude for being on a path that helps us see the world honestly, those, not glib happiness, those are the key components of a joyful mind. The idea here isn't to shy away from the pain or the suffering or the loss or the hate in the world. It is to embrace them. As Master Trungpa, who wrote or actually taught on this subject quite a bit, and his teachings have been gathered into a book that has a series of essays or collections of his teachings on it. He taught in his commentary on Slogan 21, the point of this slogan is continuously to maintain a sense of joyful satisfaction. That means that every mishap is good, because it is encouragement for you to practice the Dharma. That is, to nourish the wisdom and compassion that will help reduce suffering. It is a joyful mind, Trungpa teaches, because you do not have to be startled by any situation of wretchedness, or for that matter, sudden upliftedness. Instead, you can maintain a sense of cheerfulness all along. The joyful mind is equanimity. It is balance. This joyfulness, this cheerfulness, writer Caitlin Hatch says, isn't about being happy all the time or finding the silver lining in every difficulty. It's about seeing how every situation, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable or painful, is an opportunity to wake up. An opportunity, even when we are in the midst of grief or rage or fear, to learn, to grow, to cultivate wisdom and compassion. This joy isn't blind. Its eyes are wide open. It sees the world. And in that joy, in that awareness of both the wretched and the uplifting and the vast universe in between, Trungpa sees the beginnings of compassion. This is not an easy cheer. Trungpa, in his teachings, didn't pretend that it was. He taught that this kind of cheerfulness has a lot of guts. And rather than diluting the difficulty, he doubled down on it, teaching, if someone punches you in the mouth and says, you are terrible, you should be grateful that such a person has actually acknowledged you and said so. You could, in fact, respond with tremendous dignity by saying, thank you. I appreciate your concern. In that way, his neurosis is taken over by you, taken into you, much as is done in Tonglen practice. There is immense sacrifice taking place here. If you think this is ridiculously trippy, you're right. In some sense, the whole thing is ridiculously trippy. I really wish I had been around to hear this guy talk. I don't picture this old monk talking about things being ridiculously trippy. And frankly, some of his language was not safe for the church. He was great. In some sense, the whole thing is ridiculously trippy. But if somebody doesn't begin to provide some kind of harmony, we will not be able to develop sanity in this world at all. Somebody has to plant the seed so that sanity can happen on this earth. It's a painting by Japanese Zen master Hakuin. And this painting was done in the late 19th century, I think. A monkey hunkers down, its hands tightly covering its ears, while in the background a cuckoo flies overhead, mouth open, singing. Now, the cuckoo was revered, may still be revered, in Japan as a harbinger of ease and relaxation. And the monkey, trapped in its thoughts, can't hear the birdsong. Now, beneath the painting, Hakuin wrote a short poem. Even when not listening, lift up one hand. The cuckoo. Here is the slogan's joyful mind. Whatever's troubling that monkey, whatever it's struggling to block out by covering its ears, may well be painful or scary or dread-inducing. Whatever it is, for the monkey, it is weighty and it is real. But real, too, is that cuckoo and its song. Lift up one hand, the joyful mind tells us. Don't deny the hurt. Don't pretend it isn't there. That would turn the monkey in the painting into Jim, the grumpy monkey from today's story. Now, Jim couldn't stomp and sing and eat old meat and all of the other things that the animals wanted to do for fun because he was too busy insisting nothing was wrong to see joy. He had to see that he was grumpy before he could stop being quite so grumpy. So yes, see the hurt, the pain, the anger, just don't cling to it. Lift up one hand. Hear the cuckoo's song. Know, celebrate that the hurt isn't all there is. Reverend Sunshine Wolf says that as human beings, we have to be able to contain the brokenness within the wholeness of who we are. And if we can't do that, if we don't do that, we fall into what Reverend Forrest Church called the sin of sophisticated resignation. We've seen the world's troubles. We're smart. We understand them. It's too far gone. Nothing we can do will be enough. So let's just retreat into our own lives and make the best of it. No. Always maintain only a joyful mind. It's not an easy thing. Honestly, I'm not even convinced it's a truly possible thing for us mere mortals. Always and only? I don't think so. But perfection can't be the standard we judge it by. It can't be all or nothing. It's not what faith is about for me. Faith is about aspiration, about trying to be a little better every day. All or nothing, that is the path to Forrest Church's sophisticated resignation. And that is part of what this slogan is telling us. Yes, we are the yucky mud, but we are also the lotus. We have to remember, we have to remind ourselves, we come together to remind each other to see both. Because it is not resignation and retreat that the world needs. What the world needs is our real, honest, awakened, and yes, joyful minds. So may it be. Amen. Now please Rise as you are able in body or spirit and join us in our closing hymn, There is More Love Somewhere.